Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 17th of July. You're tuned into our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. I'm Mark Broom, and let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Working level officials from the two Koreas are meeting this morning to discuss North Korea's participation in the upcoming Asian Games in the south. Watchers say North Korea may use the meeting to continue its peace overtures to the south. The official campaign period for the July 30th by-elections got underway this morning. Candidates will compete in 15 districts and they'll have 13 days until the day before the elections to win the hearts of voters. Plus, 4 Palestinian children have been killed after an Israeli gunboat shelled a Gaza beach. Despite this, a temporary 5-hour ceasefire has been agreed between Israel and Hamas. But our top story this morning, the two Koreas are holding working-level talks on this Thursday morning to discuss North Korea's participation in the upcoming Asian Games in South Korea. Before departing for the border village of Panmunjom, where the talks are taking place, the South Korean chief delegate said the meeting is aimed at discussing practical issues and added that he will attend it in a calm and sincere manner. Top of the agenda are the transportation and accommodation of the North Korean athletes coming to South Korea and also that of the cheering squad, and also how the expenses will be covered. These are the first inter-Korean working-level talks on sports-related matters in nearly 7 years when the two sides met ahead of the 2008 Beijing Olympics. Turning now to President Park Geun-hye's new cabinet, which is finally taking shape after more than a few hiccups along the way. Now that her new team is essentially in place, almost in place, the president will push ahead with efforts to spur economic growth and reform the government. Choi Yoo-sun reports.
President Park Geun-hye has appointed 5 of her cabinet nominees who were confirmed by Parliament last week. Her spokesperson said the president appointed Choi Kyung-hwan as the new finance minister and deputy prime minister and Lee Byung-gi as the head of the National Intelligence Service on Tuesday. She also appointed Choi Yang-hee, Lee Ki-kwon, and Kim Hee-jung as the ministers of science, labor, and gender equality, respectively. And despite the parliament's disapproval, President Park went ahead and appointed Chung Jong-sub as the new security minister. The president, who retained the current prime minister after her 2 previous nominees stepped aside and who withdrew her nomination for education minister Tuesday, cannot afford further delays in handing over state affairs to a new cabinet. After dropping education minister designate Kim Myung-soo, who was grilled by parliament over allegations of thesis plagiarism, President Park quickly nominated Hwang Woo-yeol, her political aide and a prominent figure within the ruling party. Hwang is close to the president, and if confirmed by the National Assembly, he would join new finance minister Choi Kyung-hwan as the president's 2 deputy prime ministers, a move likely intended to expand cooperation with the parliament. Meeting with the ruling and opposition parties' leadership in recent days, President Park sought the parliament's cooperation on a series of bills to revitalize the economy and others to reform the government and public sector in the aftermath of April's ferry tragedy. Meanwhile, Culture Minister nominee Chung Sung-keun, who was not confirmed by the National Assembly, dropped his bid Wednesday morning. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
Now, in this next report, we focus on the new finance minister, Choi Kyung-hwan. During his first day on the job on Wednesday, Minister Choi promised aggressive fiscal measures in the hope of boosting the economy. Na Hyung-kyung reports.
Low growth, a downsized economy in pursuit of better balance, an absence of notable results. I think this is the reality we are faced with.
New Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has made it clear that he will be proactive in his new role. In his inauguration speech Wednesday, Choi said passive macroeconomic policies have caused the Korean economy to slow down and have also resulted in less tax revenue. One of his plans to tackle those problems was to reform unnecessary restrictions that keep businesses from finding new investment opportunities.
When companies do well, they will, in return, create more jobs and up the earnings for households, which will spend more. We need to establish this virtuous cycle in order to strengthen domestic demand.
As he has long been hinting since being nominated, Choi reiterated plans to ease the debt-to-income and loan-to-value ratio regulations for mortgage loans to prop up the real estate market. Experts say the challenge will be doing so without drastically increasing already soaring household debt, on top of trying to boost consumer sentiment, which dipped after the April ferry disaster. Choi said the nation's growth outlook will have to be revised down and that an adjusted roadmap will have to be established, but added the ministry will not seek a supplementary budget this year. 나현경, ARIRANG News.
The official campaign period for the July 30th by-elections started this morning. Ruling and opposition party candidates will compete in 15 districts around the nation, and they'll have 13 days until the day before the elections to try and persuade voters in their district. 6 of the 15 seats up for grabs are in Seoul and its surrounding areas. 2 and 4 in the Gyeongsang-do and Jeollado provinces, respectively, and 3 constituencies are in the Chungcheong-do provinces. Early voting will be available, but only for 2 days, starting on Friday, July 25th. Voters will only be allowed to vote in their designated district polling stations. Now, in economic news, the governor of Korea's central bank has warned against lowering interest rates, saying ballooning household debt, a major problem for the country, poses a huge threat to the economy. Ji Myung-gil reports.
Mounting household debt, that's what Korea's central bank chief thinks is the biggest threat to Korea's economic health. Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol expressed concern on Wednesday that household debt is rising at a faster rate than income growth, and that loan extensions are growing, particularly in non-banking institutions. Lee told an economic forum in Seoul that overall household debt is not expected to develop into a financial system failure, as high-income earners account for 70% of total household debt. But the low-income earners are having trouble paying off their bills. Those who spend more than 40% of their income servicing their debts accounted for 11% of debt holders last year, up from 9% from a year earlier. He was on same page with the new finance minister Choi Kyung-hwan that spurring consumer spending and corporate investment are the keys to bolstering growth. But he said lowering key interest rate leads to a rise in household debts, eventually hurting purchasing power. As for the overall economic outlook, he added that growth would recover in the third quarter of the year, but there were risks of lower than expected growth in view of the volatility of the Korean won and the lack of confidence among businessmen and consumers. The central bank lowered its economic growth last week by 0.2 percentage point to 3.8% for this year. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
Now, today, July 17th, marks Korea's Constitution Day. This is the day when the nation's constitution was first proclaimed in 1948. But not that many Koreans, especially the younger generation, know what the day is all about. Hwang Jie reports.
내일 7월 17일 무슨 날인지 알아요? 혹시?
아니요, 몰라요.
제헌절이 무슨 날인지는 알아요?
네. 헌법이 만들어지나?
혹시 내일 7월 17일 무슨 날인지 알아요?
내일 잘 모르겠는데. 그러니까 제헌절이라는 날은 있는 건 아는데 그거에 대해서 자세하게 아는 거는 별로.
Most of these teenagers on the street had no idea what Constitution Day is, and even if they knew, very few knew it fell on July 17th. A recent survey of some 12,000 elementary school students shows only half fully understand what the day is all about. A quarter didn't know what Constitution Day is, while 12% confused the day with other national holidays. Since 2008, Korea's Constitution Day stopped being a national holiday, a possible reason for the lack of understanding. So why was it removed? Simply because there were too many holidays. And to raise awareness of the day the Constitutional Court of Korea is opening its doors to the people. Students attend lectures, take quizzes, and try on the robes of the judges. Through that process, they get to appreciate the significance of Constitution Day and gain a better understanding of their own basic rights.
By coming here, I got some questions I had about the Constitution and about the court answered. It was good to come here because I got to learn things I couldn't learn in school.
Experts say it's important for people, and in particular the nation's younger generation, to appreciate Constitution Day as it lays the foundation for mature citizenship.
By going through the meaning of the Constitution, students will realize what is the meaning of democracy, the rule of law, and the meaning of basic rights of the citizens, basic liberties.
The court plans to hold the event every year. Hwang Jie, ARIRANG News.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Thursday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim standing by at the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning, Mark.
Just news coming in, really, that Israel and Hamas now have agreed to a temporary ceasefire for a few hours at least. And the Israeli military is saying now that it is investigating the death of these four young boys who are believed to have been struck down by Israeli air fire.
That's right, Mark. We have a number of developments to get to. We are hearing Hamas has agreed to that humanitarian pause brokered by the United Nations, and with Israel's okay earlier this morning, UN staff will have a 5-hour window to transport food and medical supplies. It will be effective from 10 in the morning to 3 p.m. local time. Meanwhile, as you said, Israel's military says it is investigating the death of 4 young boys who witnesses say they were struck down by Israeli fire. They say the boys' brothers and cousins, ages 9 to 11, were playing at the beach when Israeli airstrikes hit the area. A 5th boy remains in critical condition, and 6 others were reported hurt in that barrage that struck near a hotel where foreign media were staying. Deadly rocket and missile exchanges for the past 9 days have killed at least 213 Palestinians. Hamas militants have fired more than 1,200 rockets into Israel, according to officials. U.S. President Barack Obama announced in a press conference earlier this morning that he was escalating sanctions against Russia for Moscow's failure to take concrete steps to control the violence in Ukraine. The latest round would target a series of large banks as well as energy and defense firms, severely restricting access to American debt markets for the affected companies. The European Union has also said it is poised to expand its sanctions against Russia. EU leaders are expected to suspend large-scale financing of Russian public sector projects by the bloc's lending institutions. They will also widen sanctions, freezing the assets of companies benefiting from or supporting the Ukrainian unrest. The names of those companies have not been released. The United Nations says control of the AIDS epidemic is possible by the year 2030. The UN AIDS agency said AIDS-related deaths and new HIV infections have fallen globally by 1/3 in the past 10 years. Growing access to drugs and preventative measures were a couple of the many factors contributing to this picture, but it did say more international effort is needed, saying the fragile window of opportunity is the next 5 years. A Stockholm court has ruled the law-standing arrest warrant for Julian Assange should stand, marking a setback for the WikiLeaks founder, who has been fighting extradition to Sweden, where he faces sexual assault allegations. In August of 2010, 2 Swedish women went to police, one saying she was raped by the Australian programmer and the other sexually molested. Assange has said the charges are U.S. attempts to take him in for his work on WikiLeaks. He has been in hiding at the Ecuadorian embassy in London for more than 2 years. His lawyers said they will appeal the court ruling.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers 15 billion. China has released its 14th set of confessions from Japanese war criminals in its attempt to raise international awareness of Japan's wartime atrocities amid its ongoing disputes with Tokyo over history and territory. The Chinese government is publishing the confessions every day for the next, for 45 days. Kim Yeon-bin has the details on this latest release.
In the latest war criminal confession to be released by China, Geishi Shimioka, an officer of Japanese Imperial Army, admits that troops under his control used to engage in human target practice. He says that, at the time, it was his unit's policy was to build up soldiers' courage by letting them shoot at Chinese prisoners of war. In July 1942, in Taiwan City, 220 POWs were used as live targets, and each Japanese cadet was ordered to kill POW.
In another instance, 340 new recruits killed 340 prisoners of war.
On top of this, Japanese troops used germ warfare on villages, spreading typhoid and cholera to the residents. They also raped hundreds of women and executed them after, in an attempt to hide evidence.
After a young woman was raped, lower-ranked troops were often ordered to rape the woman's mother.
Geishi also confessed to personally killing numerous civilians and POWs using a traditional sword carried by Japanese officers. Kim Yeon-bin, ARIRANG News.
Now, the leaders of the BRICS nations are forging a multi-billion-dollar financial alliance. The world's top 5 emerging economies agreed earlier this week to establish a development bank to rival Western-dominated institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. Connie Kim reports on the landmark agreement that could radically overhaul the existing global financial order.
The leaders of the 5 BRICS nations have signed a deal to launch a $100 billion development bank and a currency reserve pool with the aim of challenging Western-dominated institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund.
This will not only help increase the voice of BRICS nations in terms of international finance, but more importantly will bring benefits to all the people in the BRICS countries and for all people in developing countries.
The new development bank, announced at the 6th BRICS Summit in Fortaleza, Brazil on Tuesday, will fund infrastructure projects in the founding members, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, as well as other developing nations. With its headquarters in Shanghai and India as president the first year, the bank will start out with $50 billion in capital, with each BRICS country paying in an equal amount. Total capital is expected to eventually double to $100 billion. A so-called contingent reserve arrangement will also be created where each country will put in a designated amount in case of a currency crisis. The contingency fund will amount to $100 billion, with China contributing $41 billion, followed by Brazil, Russia, and India putting in $18 billion each, and South Africa chipping in $5 billion. BRICS represents about 42% of the world's population and accounts for roughly 1/5 of the world economy. The launch of the institution is being seen as a landmark achievement as the 5 countries started summit talks in 2009 to counter the influence of the West. If everything goes according to plan, the new development bank will start lending in 2016. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Korean dramas and Korean pop music, K-pop, have made a name for themselves on the global stage in recent years. And this has left many wondering whether the clothes they wear on those shows and in those music videos will be next. Well, those taking part in the country's largest fashion trade show certainly think it will be. Our Park Ji-won reports.
The next global trend to come out of Korea is believed to be K-fashion, following in K-pop's footsteps. This show is part of Korea's biggest fashion business market and trade fair, which aims to help the country's up-and-coming designers venture into the overseas market. EXO, one of the hottest K-pop idol groups around, attended the opening to boost exposure of K-fashion. For designers, trade shows like this are considered the first step towards presenting their works on runways at major collections around the world. That's why young Korean designers like Kim Hee-jin participate in the fair, hoping it leads to lucrative opportunities.
In just a couple of hours, I was approached by foreign buyers from China and Italy. They said they like my designs and it seems like contracts will soon follow.
Influential foreign buyers think Korean designs have what it takes to thrive on the global market.
Back to basics in the colors and in the fabrics, but with this extreme cure about details. So everything that reminds me about a little bit like Rick Owens, Gareth Pog.
Over 120 brands and designers participate in the three-day event, which acts as a sneak preview for some of the trends that may reappear during Seoul Fashion Week in October. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off in swimming with Marine boy Park Tae-hwan. Of course, with the Olympic swimmer in Korea for the national trials, all eyes were on the 25-year-old and he didn't disappoint. Now with the national team trials taking place in Kimcheon, Park Tae-hwan finishes off his 200-meter qualifying round with the final time of 1 minute 45.25 seconds, coming in first and setting a new event record. For Park Tae-hwan, not only did he qualify for the 200-meter event for the Incheon Asian Games in September, he also set a record for the best time this season, beating out Australia's Cameron McAvoy's time of 1 minute 45.46 seconds. And now moving over to the South Korean national football team, a day after it was reported that the KFA has been looking into Ulsan Hyundai Tigers head coach Kim Ho-gon to possibly lead the national team. Reports have now surfaced that they're also looking for a foreign coach, and it's Michael Schoenberg, a 47-year-old assistant coach of the Norwegian club Vålerenga. Now, although he's a relatively unknown coach, he has apparently been contacted by the Japanese national football team as well, according to reports from a Danish sports paper. But according to the KFA, while it is true that there is some kind of interest, their main focus at the moment is normalizing the current technical committee in the KFA before choosing their next head coach. And now moving over to some Wednesday night's KBO action, the Nexon Heroes hold on to beat the Lotte Giants 4-3 with LG crushing Samsung 9-2 and the Hanwha Eagles on fire, beating the SK Wyverns 12-3. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Doosan Bears take on the NC Dinos. And of course, going into the game here, first inning of the game, Kim Hyun-soo with an RBI ground out gives the Doosan Bears the early 1-0 lead. But the bottom of the inning, NC answers back thanks to former Doosan Bear Lee Jong-wook with an RBI single to right, tying it up before NC adds a few more runs off of Dustin Nippert. This including another former Doosan Bear Son Shi-hyun with an RBI single as the NC Dinos take a 4-1 lead after the first inning. But a roller coaster of a game as Doosan comes back to score 4 times in the 4th inning and twice in the 5th to take a 7-4 lead going into the 6th inning. But like they have throughout the season, Doosan's bullpen collapses once again, this including a 4-run 7th inning as NC comes back to win it 10-8. And now staying with baseball, but over to Japan, where South Korean slugger Lee Dae-ho will be headed to his 3rd straight NPB All-Star Game. And while Lee Dae-ho has previously gone to the All-Star Game after being voted by his manager and also through fan voting in the past 2 years, he now gets the nod after the players in the league voted for him to play in the All-Star Game. Now, he stated that because he's a foreign player, it means that much more for the players to vote for him to the All-Star Game. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. I'm Ijehyun with your weather update. Well, we have welcome rain in store today across the region. Rain is expected in the southern provinces from this morning to late afternoon, then gradually expanded to the central area. Well, we won't get much precipitation, but when it does rain, it could fall heavily at times, and it will come along with thunder and lightning, and upper areas could receive showers into tomorrow morning as well. So with the nationwide monsoon rain in the forecast, temperatures should be a tad lower than yesterday. Highs in many regions will hover below 30 degrees Celsius. So let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The high in Seoul will rise to 30, while Daegu will have a daily high of 29, and Gwangju and Busan should see a high of 27 this afternoon. And for other regions, Jeju Island and Dokdo should see a high of 28. Daejeon will reach 29, while Mount Kumgang peaks to 21. Well, don't forget to have an umbrella handy on your way out. That's all for now. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much for the tip there, Jian. And that's all we have for now. We'll be back with another newscast at noon Korea time in about 90 minutes. Until then, goodbye.